Twitter. Harvard Business School professor Bill George weighing in on whether Dorsey can actually handle being the head of Twitter and Square simultaneously. That's a whole case study in itself.
Yes, ma'am.
Long quest. Twitter officially announcing today that Jack Dorsey will be the permanent CEO of the company, and importantly, he will also be keeping his job as the CEO of Square, though the search criteria reportedly required a full-time commitment to Twitter. Peter Curry, the man who led the CEO search committee, is confident, he says, in Dorsey's abilities to manage both companies.
We did not start this search with this scenario in mind. We assumed we would only consider a candidate who could make an undivided commitment to be our CEO. But over time, it became apparent to us that Jack was not just meeting, but surpassing the expectations we had of him as interim CEO, while also running Square.
Well, let's talk about it. Joining us, our friend, the CNBC contributor Bill George, professor at the Harvard Business School. He's the author of the book, Discover Your True North. Of course, he ran Medtronic for many years. Bill, great to see you again. You're the management guru. Do you think that Jack Dorsey can pull this off?
Well, I'm pleased to see him coming back to Twitter. I think that he's had 7 years in the wilderness, and it needs a product guy at the top. And he's obviously, in the last 3 months, inspired the engineers and product developers, and he's got people on track. I think he's going to have to let the Square team run Square, but he's not going to be able to spend a lot of time there. This is a big job right now to get the user base growing again, to expand the product line, and frankly, to attract advertisers by getting users to be more engaged. And at the same time, he's got to build his management team, and he's got to strengthen the board. So that's a full-time job. I think he'll do two things for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised over time if he finds someone else to take over Square, particularly if it's getting ready to go public, because he'll get some pushback from the regulators when he does that.
Hang on for 1 second, Bill, and could you do us a favor and turn the audio down on the monitor you got there with you while we go back to Sue Herrera. She's got some breaking news on DuPont. Sue?
Indeed, I do. Ellen Coleman, who is the CEO and chairman of DuPont, is going to step down. She's retiring effective on August 16th. On October 16th, I should say. On that date, Edward Breen, who is the current member of the DuPont board, will assume the role of interim chair and CEO of DuPont. The board says it has engaged an executive recruitment firm to identify a full-time replacement. But once again, Ellen Coleman to retire as chair and CEO of DuPont effective on October 16th. Edward Breen, who's on the board already, will assume the role of interim chair and CEO of DuPont. Sarah, back to you.
Wow, well, we've got the right guest to talk about this. Sue Herrera, thanks very much. Bill George, you have looked at DuPont. You've looked at this case study. You've looked at the proxy battle with Tryon. We talked earlier to Ed Garden, David Faber did, about DuPont sticking in that stock. It is the worst performing Dow component so far this year, almost 30%. Is this a good move for her to leave now?
Well, I'm very surprised. I'm not sure the background of what happened here, but it's clear that Ed Breen and the board has stepped in and decided that a change is made. I like Ellen a lot. I think she's done a good job. Things have not gone well since they won the proxy fight, and there must be a decision on her part and the board's part to find fresh leadership. But it comes as a big surprise to me. No doubt they're being pressured by drop in commodity markets, but beyond that, they've got a big job to do, and I think this is going to shake a lot of things up, and it could even bring Tryon back in again. Who knows? But
we'll get back to Twitter
in a second, puts DuPont up for grabs until they find a permanent CEO.
And I should mention that
it doesn't seem like a well-planned move at all to me.
I should mention that Bill George has come out in defense of Ellen Coleman in the proxy war with Tryon, which she won. Hey,
Bill, is it unfair to judge the performance of a CEO based on the stock performance? I mean, Sarah just mentioned that it's been the worst performing stock inside the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Is that a reason to jettison your CEO necessarily?
Well, I think it depends on time. You know, you've got terrible commodity markets, and that's putting a lot of pressure on them. That's why I'm so surprised. Certainly not in a 3-month period or 4-month period since the proxy fight. But Ellen might have decided that the whole thing had worn her down. She wanted her to go off and give someone else a shot. But they're going to have to stabilize this company very quickly. Otherwise, they're at risk, if not Tryon, then somebody else coming in. So I think they're going to have to find permanent leadership. Ed Breen's a terrific guy. Maybe he'll do it, but they're going to have to find permanent leadership here very quickly to preserve the two-century-old legacy of DuPont.
Bill, how will this proxy fight now be viewed in light of this recent news? Because when it happened, it was viewed as a victory for DuPont, a failure for Trian, but then you see the way that the stock performed. At the time, Ellen Coleman was hailed a hero of the company for standing up to boardroom activists. How will we view that now?
Well, I think that's a big question. It was a close vote. I should point out it was not a landslide by like a lot of these proxy fights have been. This was a close one, and I think a lot of the short-term holders wanted to see some action there. I certainly would hate to see DuPont broken up into little pieces and lose their central research lab, which is an American treasure. So that's why I say a new CEO is going to have to step in very quickly, or the company will be under a lot of pressure here. But it could have just worn it down. I know that she gave heart and soul to preserving the DuPont, and frankly, to spin off their commodity chemical business with a whole new company, and so they've got a whole new future. Stocks get a little hyped during a proxy fight and get pushed up, but I think the decline has been more than one would expect. So it looks like it's going to have a new leader coming in. I hope they can find the right person quickly to take this over. They can't afford to wait for 6 months to put someone in charge.
Put it in perspective for us, though, in light of here is what could be perceived as a victory now with her stepping down for an activist investor in Trian. You know, activist investors have been very active in the last few years. Good or bad for corporate boardrooms in the aggregate?
Well, I think it all depends on the company and what they're proposing. There have been cases where a value line comes in, Jeff Ubben comes into Microsoft, and I think caused some very good change with Satya Nadella coming in. So I think it all depends. PepsiCo, same Trian, I don't think it was a good thing, and Indra in that case held the line. Now GE is saying with Trian coming in there, they welcome them. So this is a kind of a brave new world out there. But I think it's important that companies are clear about their strategy and clear that they're building for the long term. At the same time, they're meeting their shareholders' needs. And that's a tough juggling act for any CEO to do today, to meet the needs of all their shareholders, particularly when a new shareholder shows up. So big challenge out there. So I think it's a mixed bag. If a company's more about it not performing like Canadian Pacific Railway was and Bill Ackman came in, that's a good thing. But if a company's a peak performer, I don't think it's a good thing. So I think you have to get down to cases and look at what the plan is. And I didn't think that in case of DuPont that Nelson Peltz ever presented a viable plan. He just wanted to break it up. And that was going to get some short-term gain and no long-term future for the company as I saw it.
Well, meanwhile, the business continues to suffer. In this announcement, it was also revealed that they're lowering their operating earnings guidance this year to 275 from 310. They're blaming currencies. Obviously, they have a lot of international exposure, so the strong dollar hurts. Emerging markets have also been a problem, guys. Do we have the after-hours chart? Because the stock, interestingly,
I think it was higher.
With this lowered guidance, is popping more than 10% in the after-hours on the news that Coleman will resign. I mean, shareholders are happy to hear that she's going.
Bill, you never want to be the CEO that when you leave, the stock goes up 4%, but that's what's happening with Ellen right now.
No, you sure don't. I feel badly for her, but it's clear that people are anticipating some form of significant change. I just hope that they preserve a viable long-term course for this great American entity, and that it doesn't disappear like some other organizations have, like Bell Labs did a few years ago.
Well, they're holding a conference call at 5 p.m. Eastern time, so we'll have more details for you then. But in the meantime, Bill, great to have you on for this.
Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Serendipitous to have him there.
I know. It's one business school case study after another.
We do have much more on this DuPont shakeup still ahead coming up.